Good Damage is an insightful study of trauma through Diane Nguyen, and showcases Diane's struggles in the wake of her move to Chicago. It's a turning point for the viewer's understanding of Diane, as well as her journey towards stability. It's an emotionally raw episode that beautifully captures the nuances of how our mind can exacerbate our own insecurities, and that's why it stands out. Here to help me break down the episode is my good friend and BoJack fan, Offbeat Kiki.
Hey everybody, I'm Offbeat Kiki, expert depression understander, here to help Johnny break down this episode. While BoJack was in the dark about Diane's life, the viewer was too, and the Diane that we meet in Good Damage is being much more real with herself about the state of her life. This is a trait that stays with her for the rest of the show, and one of the strongest signals of her trauma recovery. Get your happy shoes on. So the episode begins with a montage of Diane's life seemingly being better because of her medication. The whole sequence is presented with a song about getting your happy shoes on, and every part of the sequence ends with Diane solving a problem, giving a thumbs up, and holding up her medication. However, this doesn't apply to every aspect of her life, because she's made zero progress on her book. And that's a big deal, because the book deal has a deadline, and you can tell time has passed. Diane looks different. She's gained weight, which is a common side effect of antidepressants, and that takes a while to happen. As an aside, I love that the show didn't portray her weight gain negatively, and barely even brought it up. Weight gain can be a positive thing, or a neutral thing. For the viewer, the dread starts to set in. How long has it been since Diane got this book deal? How okay is she really? When we saw Diane in the face of depression 2 episodes prior, she tried to pretend she was doing great at the diner, but when she and BoJack got back to her place, she confessed that she had been having trouble with her book, and Guy suggested she take antidepressants, but she was wary of trying them again. And she says, "Sure, or you just flip over the nothing, and underneath there's more nothing, and then you flip over the nothing and there's more nothing underneath that."
So you just keep flipping over nothings all your life because you keep thinking under all that nothing, there's gotta be something, but all you find is nothing.
2 episodes later, after starting her antidepressants, then quitting them due to being unable to access the pain she thinks she needs in order to write her book, she seems even worse off than before. Let's think about the song they chose for Diane's antidepressants montage at the beginning of the episode. What is the meaning behind getting your happy shoes on in relation to Diane's life? To me, it seems like they're juxtaposing that song with that montage to make the point that this happiness is like an item of clothing. It can be taken on and off with her meds, and that ability to function goes with it. So it's not that her life is actually better because bad things are still happening to her all the time and we see it in that montage. It's that her executive functioning is better. That's basically the set of skills that involve monitoring oneself, controlling emotions, planning, organizing, and initiating tasks. And in tandem with this newfound skill, the learned helplessness she's suffered from for so much of her life is loosening its grip on her. Often thought to be one of the underlying causes of depression, learned helplessness is a condition in which a person who has experienced trauma suffers from a sense of powerlessness. With these 2 facets of her mental health aided by her medication, for the first time in maybe her whole life, Diane can fight back when her brain tells her to give up. And when she quits her antidepressants to access her pain for her book, her ability to fight goes with them. Her brain is surrendered back to the piles of nothing being flipped over and over. The happy shoes are so off they've been donated to Goodwill. So why does Diane struggle so much? Where did these issues and everything else under the umbrella of her depression come from?
I deserved it.
The problem is you always blame other people, Dee.
The effects of Diane's traumatic childhood are apparent throughout all of BoJack Horseman, and her attempts to grapple with these effects in Good Damage reveal a lot more about her pain. Diane's hope here is to make sense of her trauma, to take the bad things that she experienced and mold them into something positive. But to do that, she needs to access and explore that trauma. But Diane's recollection of her damage is chaotic, messy, and difficult to decipher, and so the episode brilliantly portrays these memories as sketchy, poorly formed images and drawings that are equally difficult to make out. Diane knows how her childhood affected her, but verbalizing and putting it down on paper isn't an easy task. But Diane's difficulty expressing her trauma is ironically a result of her trauma, and this is actually something that had been portrayed earlier in the series. We learn a ton about Diane's history and childhood through previous episodes, like Live Fast Diane Nguyen and The Dog Days Are Over. We know that Diane's family made it incredibly difficult for her to express herself all throughout her life. Diane's parents and 4 brothers were not loving or nurturing and often prioritized their own comfort and happiness over Diane's. She even sees her father as a literal monster in these visualizations revelations as she tries to write her memoir. In a flashback scene in The Dog Days Are Over, Diane asks her father about their Vietnamese heritage. She even reveals that her father is literally a tenured professor of Vietnamese history at Tufts University, but despite this, he is unwilling to share even a little bit of information about their heritage with her.
Dee Dee, that's my job. I wouldn't ask you to have a period on your day off.
So it's firmly established that even asking the simplest of questions, completely reasonable inquiries, were met with not only indifference, but derision from her father. Diane was conditioned not to ask questions or express her true feelings from a young age. Diane even mentions in this episode how her father used to make her lose to her brothers at Boggle on purpose so that her brothers felt smarter. Her own self-worth was sacrificed for her siblings, and we saw how this affected her relationship with her brothers in Live Fast, Diane Nguyen, showing that they didn't care about Diane's time or feelings. We learned that in high school, Diane's brothers basically catfished Diane and invented a pen pal. All of the feelings that Diane wasn't able to express as a child, she had found a seemingly safe space to express those things to her pen pal, only to learn that she had been tricked by the very people who prevented her from expressing those feelings in the first place. And not only did they trick her into opening herself up, but this resulted in a devastating embarrassment when she learned the pen pal wasn't real, and she didn't actually have a date to her prom. Her brothers even continued to bring up this event to harass Diane nearly 20 years later.
You know, it's nice that years later we can all laugh about this.
Yep, my therapist thinks the same thing.
So, of course, Diane learned not to open up, not to express herself. We see the effects of this in her marriage with Mr. Peanut Butter. During couples therapy, Diane struggles immensely to express her true feelings towards him.
Mr. Peanut Butter, I think you are great.
This is something that comes much easier for PB, but it's understandable that Diane has trouble here, not only given her childhood, but also the way that Mr. Peanut Butter has previously ignored her own attempts to express herself. Throughout Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter's marriage, Diane had to continually express to him that she doesn't like big, grand gestures, yet he ignored her all the way up until their marriage ended. From the Hollywood D to the surprise party to the bell room, Diane had to constantly tell Mr. Peanut Butter that she didn't like the pressure that comes with these sorts of gifts and gestures, but he ignored her time and time again until the bell room was the straw that broke the camel's back, ending their marriage. Diane feeling ignored and undervalued is a constant throughout her adulthood as well. When her father died, she goes back to Boston to pay respects, but is roped into doing everything for her mother and brothers, who continually criticize and guilt trip her the entire time. She's forced to make her father's entire funeral arrangements and pay for it, and literally none of her family even shows up to the funeral. And when she expresses her frustrations about this, they don't even care. They're all so self-centered that her effort is completely undermined.
You begged me to stay and help.
Why does everything always gotta be about big shot Diane? Too good for her home.
And so Diane's struggle to express and verbalize all of this damage that she's endured is in fact a result of that very same damage. Her difficulty to fully express herself stems from an entire life of being ridiculed for expressing herself. Her own sense of self-worth slowly being undermined over almost 40 years. And in her attempts to write her memoir, the things that Diane tries to express are actually completely true, but the way she expresses them is the struggle. When she starts to talk about kintsugi, a Japanese art where broken bowls are rebuilt, highlighting the cracks rather than hiding them, we do get an important point about our trauma and our experiences.
So in a way, that salad bowl was me, and the cracks were also me. Ugh, it sucks, I'm sorry.
While Diane says this in a way that is very clumsy due to her difficulty expressing herself, she is right, and it's an important message. Those cracks in the salad bowl of herself are a part of her. You can't separate the bowl from the cracks, or vice versa. All of the trauma and pain we endure is a part of who we are, and the episode very intelligently portrays the same idea through another character in the B story, but at a different point in their personal timeline, Penny Carson.
So after we've gone on this internal struggle journey of Diane's, we're reminded, hey, don't get it twisted, this is BoJack's show, and Paige Sinclair is hot on the trail of what happened the night Sarah Lynn died. They track down Penny, and although it may seem out of place to put this segment in the same episode as Diane's story, it actually makes perfect sense because this episode is all about trauma. From Diane's struggle, to the initial topic of her book, to the fashion store at the mall where Diane gets her inspiration for Ivy Tran. And Penny is definitely still dealing with her trauma around the night BoJack took her to prom. Her mom says she's only just recently gotten her anxiety attacks under control. And though they don't mention it, we can see that the only thing left on her bedroom wall is a photo of her and her friend Maddie, who got alcohol poisoning on prom night in Escape from LA. All of the other decorations went with her to college, and despite her traumatic memories of prom night, she still has the photo of them hidden in a box under her bed.
I tried to throw it out, but I couldn't. You look beautiful. I don't think that's the only reason I kept the photo, Mom. It's all really confusing.
And much like Diane, this sequence represents Penny trying to make sense of her own trauma. Penny expresses regret over not telling the reporters more about her experience with BoJack on prom night.
And he's still out there.
Penny.
If we can get the word out, if people knew.
Penny's hope here is to turn her negative experience into a positive outcome for others. She wants to find purpose in her trauma, to transform her damage into good damage, just like Diane.
After this emotional ride through Diane's subconscious and Penny's reckoning with her past, the episode ends with BoJack fainting, to remind us that no matter how deep they go, this is BoJack's story, and the narrative will always return to him.
Sometimes when you think something isn't about you, you find a way to save the day and in the end realize that it was all along all about you.
We rarely see Diane from her own perspective again after this episode. It's mostly through BoJack's eyes, and the last time she speaks to BoJack, she berates him for making his survival emotionally dependent on her.
I wish I could have been the person you thought I was, the person who would save you.
That was never your job.
Then why did you always make me feel like it was?
It's not that easy. Wouldn't it be nice if it was?
Diane believes with all her being that her trauma has to be worth something. She has to use it to benefit her life in some way, tell the story of her pain and make someone else feel less alone. And Penny feels the same, otherwise everything they've been through was all for nothing. But that's a farcical way of approaching trauma. The things we experience as children are largely not our choice, and more importantly, they are largely not our fault. Shockwaves of the failures of our parents can show up when we're 5 or 25. Diane spent her entire young life being neglected, and that pattern repeated itself throughout her adult life too as her long-term relationship with Mr. Peanut Butter played out.
This is why Guy is such a good fit for Diane as a partner. When Mr. Peanut Butter did something for Diane, it was often not actually to her benefit. It was his idea of what Diane needed or wanted, but it wasn't what she actually needed or wanted. When Guy sends Princess Carolyn the initial pages of Ivy Tran, Food Court Detective, he knows Diane will be upset because he listens to and understands her fears. He makes a decision that is in her best interest because in that moment she wasn't capable of making the decision. Guy's decision stems from a deep understanding of Diane, whereas Mr. Peanut Butter's decisions stemmed from a misunderstanding of Diane. This speaks to Guy's bond with Diane and his permanence in her life.
Diane began to believe that this experience of flipping over nothing was all she would ever know. But trauma doesn't have to mean that your life is over, or that you will amount to nothing, and it also doesn't make you special. Many people have suffered traumatic events in their lifetime. We are all conditioned to be the way that we are by our life circumstances. Diane was made to expect to not be heard, and believes that those experiences of abuse have to hold inherent value.
And though Diane was set on writing her memoirs through her trauma, ultimately, writing Ivy Tran enabled her to accomplish a similar goal. She expresses that when she was young, she thought her trauma somehow made her unique, that it would somehow inform her purpose in life.
And I decided that one day I would write something that would make little girls like me feel less alone.
But what she learns through writing Ivy Tran is that she can write through the entirety of her life experiences, not just the trauma. This is why Ivy Tran is so much more fully formed and vibrant in Diane's mind. It isn't just written through the viewpoint of her difficult-to-access trauma, it's written through Diane's entire self. Her life experience and worldview will come through in her writing even if it isn't explicitly through the lens of her traumatic experiences. And that, in turn, can still help little girls feel less alone. And this is affirmed when Guy's son Sonny reads Ivy Tran.
Parts of it felt real, you know?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I think girls are gonna like it. Especially girls who, don't have good self-esteem.
I hope so.
When Diane talks to Princess Carolyn near the end of the episode, she asks a series of questions regarding how her life could have been different, and how she has to get something out of her traumatic experiences, turn her trauma into good damage. Otherwise, she felt miserable for all those years for nothing.
I could have been happy this whole time and written books about girl detectives and been cheerful and popular and had good parents. Is that what you're saying? What was it all for?
But there is no rhyme or reason for traumatic experiences. We do not deserve for them to happen to us. There is no greater purpose to them, no inherent value that we must extract.
We don't see size here at trauma.
Applying quantification to your trauma is not useful. It doesn't help with recovery. The experience of trauma is unique for each individual and cannot be put on a spectrum. The best that we can do is accept our best and worst experiences as part of who we are. We are more than the sum of our parts, more than the things that have happened to us. A life with trauma is all of the pieces of that kintsugi bowl, and our will to grow and move forward is the glue and gold in the cracks.
Does she ever come back, that Diane?
I felt her when I got back to LA.
But it's not you.
I mean, it's all me.
Folks, thanks so much for tuning into another BoJack episode breakdown. As always, let me know what episodes you want me to cover next. And if you like this coverage of Diane, I actually did a complete Diane Nguyen timeline that you should check out. And a huge thanks to Offbeat Kiki for joining me in this breakdown.
Thanks so much, Johnny, for having me on to discuss this episode of BoJack. It's one of my favorite series, and Diane is one of my favorite characters, so this has been an absolute treat. Check out my channel where I make full retrospectives on every aspect of an animated series, including breaking down the characters and their relationships. I'll see you over there, be kind to yourself, and stay hydrated. And don't forget to check out my favorite podcast that I have guested on multiple times, Cartoons That Curse. Bye!
Johnny! Two Cellos!